Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Adult Music, your podcast about music for the mature mind. It's your co-host Russ here with Mike on...
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's you. And episode number 9, we've got a lot of great music to talk about this week.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to ask you, you keep saying music for the mature mind. Does that include us?
Well, it's what we aspire to. The reason I thought that, when I investigated the categories to put a podcast under, there's, depending on the service, and of course or Apple Podcast being the sort of king of podcasts, and most of the others have similar categories, but there's a broad music category which includes everything music related, and there's a subcategory, and so we're slotted in music commentary.
I just feel like the fact that we're doing a podcast just indicates that we've never grown up. That's just that's just the way I see it.
Yeah, what is it? Talking about music is like
talking about music is like dancing about architecture.
Architecture, right? Yeah,
I don't really understand.
But if you don't
that.
talk about it,
I don't think it's true.
No, I don't think so.
You know?
It's hard to talk about it, but
talking about music is like talking about architecture or talking about dance, for that matter. That's what people do.
You should at least talk about what other people might want to look at or listen to.
Right.
But anyway, in those categories, I noticed there's like 5 podcasts each week all about this K-pop group. What is it? I don't even know what it is. BTS or something. I've never listened to this. And I wondered, how can you have 5 podcasts about one group being so popular? And what could they be talking about the music? I really don't know.
I kind of think about, there's a whole like website, or there was, I'm sure they probably still did, that talks about, who was it? John Taylor of Duran Duran. He was the bass player for Duran Duran.
Right.
And it's an entire website dedicated to his hairstyles.
He did have
over the years
some really nice hair, as I remember back to junior high school or those days. Yeah.
Yeah. They had some great suits too. Those guys.
They did, and makeup.
Anyway, they had a good life.
To each their own. But we're not going for the mass appeal. We sort of, I guess, would be considered a niche podcast, and so we don't care to get a massive audience, but we'd like to connect with those people out there who are interested in classical music and jazz music, especially.
I want to say, I think we should go the Benjamin Zander route. He's a conductor. I think he was Boston based. At least when I was there, he was there, and he said that his ultimate goal as a teacher and a conductor of classical music is to get the entire world's population listening to classical music. And I thought that was a laudable goal, and I think that should be our goal too. We want to have the entire world listening to our podcast and telling them about good classical and jazz to listen to.
I'll settle for one person from each country to start out with. And we're not doing bad.
That would be impressive.
Yes, of course, we've got some of our Japanese-based people listening to us. We've got a lot of European listeners, which I'm really happy about. We've got France, Italy, Norway, Romania, Spain, Portugal, and so that's really promising. And we've also, gradually we're getting a few listeners in the U.S. on a state-by-state basis. We've got some South American listeners. We've got Uruguay now, and we've got we had Venezuela a couple weeks back too. We've got Central America. So yeah, we're getting some international listeners. And,
is that the whole world yet? Are we? No,
we're on our way. We'll gradually get there.
That's very cool. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you for listening. And to start out, before we get into this week's music, I just want to let our listeners know about a new feature that I thought of implementing, and I did this week, and that is playlists for all the music that we discuss in each episode. Now, I have been including in the episode notes each week documentation of the albums and the record label, and then also links to streaming on Spotify and Apple Music, because I figure those are the two most popular services people might be listening on if you'd like to check out the music on streaming. But as we mentioned on a previous podcast, Mike and I have been using Deezer. And if you're not familiar with Deezer, it's spelled Deezer. It's a music streaming service.
Z for you Brits.
Yes, Zed. It's a service based in France, and I switched over to Deezer about 2 years ago from Apple Music when I noticed Apple Music is fine for listening on your mobile device or small headphones, but when I played it through my main stereo system, I just felt it was missing something in sort of spatial qualities and dynamics, and it is a compressed format. So I noticed that there was several other services out there, Deezer included, and I bought a streamer network player for my main stereo system, and it had Deezer incorporated in it. And I thought, well, let me just try this out. They had a free trial period, and I was really sold on it. It's CD quality FLAC files, and they have a really nice classical and jazz catalog, which I appreciated. And I
do too.
Yeah, and Mike appreciates too. And that's how we share the upcoming releases with each other before we discuss them. And so I thought, although podcasts themselves are not implemented in all countries through Deezer, as we are on Deezer with our podcast, but you can't listen to it in Japan where we're based, so I can't find
really
ourselves
strange.
on it, which is very strange.
Yeah.
However, the playlists for our podcasts are up there. So if there's anyone listening on Deezer, I know we have a few podcast listeners on Deezer, although I don't have the information as to where they're from. But anyone who would like to have one easy link, if you look in the notes for each episode, I have a link to the Deezer podcast, and you click on that, it'll take you to the Deezer page. You can get all the music for each episode that's available on streaming in one click in the playlist there. Or if you're on Deezer, just search for us under Adult Music Podcast, and you'll find the playlists. And if you're interested, if you haven't tried Deezer, like Spotify or other streaming services, they have 3 levels. They have a free level that's ultra compressed. I believe it's 128 kilobytes per minute. There's a premium, which is compressed to about the same level as Apple Music, and there's a hi-fi level, which is the CD quality. And whichever you try, you can get 1 month for free. So it's a pretty good deal, and I really like their service. And then you can find all of the tunes for each podcast right there in one click. So if that's a good resource for you, please check it out. If you don't see the listening notes with the links on your app or platform, because depending on where you're listening, they may be included with the RSS upload or not. You can always look at our page on Podbeam, where everything there is very legible and easy to reach, with individual links to the recordings on Apple Music and Spotify. So check that out. You can listen to the tunes that we talk about each week.
And I just want to mention, Deezer is not sponsoring us. That's us really appreciating this app. Okay, they could sponsor us if they want.
Yes, so
someone wants to send us their way. We do like them a lot.
Who are listening here? Please at least make me able to find my own podcast. And lastly, before we step into this, if you're listening and you enjoy the show, please help our podcast grow. Subscribe or follow us on your podcasting app or platform. Give us a rating or a review.
Give us a rating,
if you enjoy it. That'll help us get
rating
noticed.
Especially, just got to click the stars.
That'll get us into the recommended browsing category, which we pop into or out of depending on the week. And also, if you have a music-loving friend, please share and recommend us to them. That'll help us grow our audience. And if you'd like to get in contact with us, we'd love to hear where you are, what you listen to. If you have any other composers or jazz musicians from your country that you'd like us to listen to, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us directly at adultmusicpodcast, one word, at gmail.com. And we'll be sure to reply to you.
Okay. Yeah. Has anyone written yet?
No listeners have written to us yet.
No listeners have written.
We've got a few reviews on
Okay.
Podbeam itself, and we've got a couple
That's
Apple
nice.
podcast ratings that are very nice. But we want more. We want to hear from our audience, and we want to contact with classical, jazz, and good music listeners around the globe. So we'd love to hear from you. So don't be shy. Please write and get in touch.
Indeed. Okay,
Right,
so I guess we're ready to go, huh?
We're
On to the
ready.
music.
Let's start with the very old.
Yeah,
what
generally
have we got coming up.
Yeah, just so we know, the way we generally plan this out is we go from old to new, and it's generally classical in the first half of the program and jazz in the last half, just in case we have listeners who just want to hear the classical part or just want to hear the jazz part. You'll know where to find them if you can fast forward ahead. Okay, so we're going back to the Baroque era, my personal favorite era. Well, I don't know about that. I like the modernist era too, which would be the late 19th, early 20th century too. But the Baroque era is generally a very happy time, and we have a very sad recording from that era. It's a requiem, which is the death mass of the Catholic Church. These were kind of popular works to put set to music, popular texts to set to music behind the actual mass. And this one is by Heinrich Biber, a German Baroque composer.
Does that mean relation to Justin Bieber is dead?
No.
His music is dead?
I was going to say no relation to Justin Bieber, thankfully, because, I don't know. The Bieb apparently has a new album out, but so does Heinrich Biber. He spells his name differently, Biber, okay?
No E.
No E in there. Okay, that would be that would be some weird.
It would be. Drake isn't on this album either, is he?
Drake is not on. Well, how did that come up?
Well, I don't know. I guess he was a guest.
No, who's on this album is Vox Luminis and the Freiburger Barockconsort, conducted by Lionel Meunier. Now, I've heard these musicians before, and that made me want to hear this recording. I do like Bieber's music, and Heinrich Biber, the 18th century Baroque composer. Now, Biber was a violinist, and I first came into contact with his music in the late 90s when this fantastic recording came out of this then unknown composer. I guess he's still relatively unknown, by Andrew Manz and Richard Egar, okay, and violin and harpsichord. And Manz, I hope I'm saying his name right, he's got an E at the end. I didn't check this one. But his sound was really, Manz's sound was really special. He had this kind of, usually you get he played a period violin, and I guess it was gut strings, but he had this really like matte sound as opposed to the shiny, pearly sound that you generally get from a modern, from most violinists. Actually, it was a gorgeous, a really unique sound, and that drew me in. The Biber violin sonatas on that recording were it's on Harmonia Mundi. You can still get it, of course, if you want to check it out. They were really free. It sounded like he wrote down improvisations, because there was like sort of these like harpsichord chords. The harpsichord didn't do much, and then there would just be these kind of like long, drawn-out notes at the beginning, as though the violinist is kind of thinking of what to play next, and then he would play that, and it just felt really meditative and free, and I really liked that. So I kind of I filed his name away, and wanted to hear his music. Now, this particular album, the Biber Requiem, was also a recommended album on Presto Music one week.
Yes.
I believe. Yeah. And that kind of just drew me in. I said, okay, we got to do this one. All right. Now, it turns out the album title is the Biber Requiem, but it turns out that the Requiem is just the centerpiece of this album that has quite a few other works on it, quite a few substantial other works on it. It's not, the Biber Requiem is not very long. It's just movements. Okay. And the thing that really made this, I liked this a lot, actually. The thing that made this album for me, first of all, is the sound. We'll get to that. The actual sound that the Freiburger Barockconsort makes and the Vox Luminis make in this recording, but also the program. Okay, the Biber Requiem really isn't enough to sustain like an entire CD. It's kind of a short work. I think it's about 20 minutes long or so. I'm guessing. I can actually check. But
the other works on here are really quite nice too. The There's
well, the first one.
Yeah, is it Fuchs Sonata is quite nice, and the other instrumental ones are really nice as well.
Yeah, the way they've done this is it starts out with two works by Christoph Bernhard, a composer of the period, and they're all Baroque composers, of course. The first one is sort of a sung text, Herr, nun lässest du deinen Diener, which I don't even know what it means. I have my booklet here. You can hear me flapping the pages away. Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart. So kind of like setting the mood for the Requiem Mass. This is a sung text. It's pretty long. It's about 12 minutes long. And then there's another work by him. Then we have an instrumental work, a sonata by Johann Michael Nicolai. Okay? Johann Michael Nicolai. Okay, a sonata. And then comes the Biber Requiem, and after that, Johann Joseph Fuchs. We have another instrumental work. So it's sort of like the Requiem is buffered by these two instrumental works, and then you get another vocal work to so he's like, it's set off sort of like a jewel in this kind of like ornate sort of setting. I really liked the programming on the disc. First of all, I thought the entire program, it makes it easy to listen to all the way through, and really enjoyable. Okay, well, let's go through this from the beginning, I guess. The Christoph Bernhard, Herr, nun lässest du deinen Diener. Beautifully set. One of the things that really impresses me about this is this ensemble's sound. It's kind of like a darker sound that you usually get in Baroque music. I'm not sure if this work used a lot of brass. There were a lot of really interesting sounding brass on this entire recording.
What the things that struck me about this, the acoustics are great. It's a really stunning recording, and then the
very close.
The overall mood, when you listen to this, it will put you in a very meditative, spiritual kind of mood. I've really turned on to this recording. I've listened to it 3 times this week. So the sonics are wonderful. And the Vox Luminis, we've listened to some of the recordings before. The purity of the voices, especially the female voices, is really arresting. The tone,
a good word.
Is so pure, and there's no vibrato on these long fermata holds, and you'll just be stunned by how the tone is very pure. And then, as you mentioned, the brass, I really was drawn in on which movement? It's the one. This is interesting. It's a 1A and 1B. Yeah, right. On the Requiem. So the 1B, the Kyrie. What I noticed in the way this is composed, and the other pieces, as you mentioned, also have a lot of brass, but in here too, the brass and the voices, rather than the orchestration being an accompaniment for the choral parts, it's actually sort of interjoined. And so many of the parts of the voices are sort of doubled in the brass voices. Yeah. And so rather than the choral work being sort of laid on top of an accompaniment, it actually joins together. And so you get the same pitches, but with different timbres, but they're so close that they're doubled. And that effect is also sort of magnified because when the voices move with the sections, the dynamics and the phrasings are perfectly in sync. So you hear the voice and the part that's doubled in one of the orchestrated parts. The crescendos, the getting louder and softer, and all of the phrasing are perfectly synced together. And it's really quite amazing when you hear, voices and instruments moving together in unison like that. But there is, for Baroque music, as you mentioned, a lot of brass on here, which I thought was, very interesting to me because I'm always listening for really good brass parts. And so all of these pieces have, really good brass arrangements on them.
Yeah, I'm always a little surprised to hear brass in like a vocal Baroque recording. Right. Usually you get a lot of strings. They're very string heavy. But it kind of gave it a darker tone, which is appropriate for the Requiem. I want to kind of say something also about what you mentioned, the voices are really pure. They're also the ensemble makes this unique sound in Baroque music. This group only sounds like themselves. There's something very unique about this, and I think it needs to be heard. I'd like to encourage everybody just to give this a sample. Go right to the Biber Requiem. You should actually. The entire album is pretty great, but so if you want to actually sit down and listen to the whole thing straight through, absolutely do that. But if you just want to get a sample, go for the Biber Requiem. Maybe the Kyrie would be a good place to start. I remember the good old bad old days of early period instrument brass back in the 1980s when people really didn't know how to play the instruments yet, and you'd hear them on recordings, and it was I remember it being, you listen to them today and they kind of sound like people are on like a turkey hunt or something.
Turkey calls, yeah,
turkey calls.
No, this one is really good. You can tell they're period instruments, but the technique is really spot on here.
Yeah,
the horns and other instruments. Yeah,
I kind of think that was really exciting back in the day, though, because it was a new sound. It was something kind of that we hadn't heard in classical music before. Back in the 70s and 80s, before period instruments came along, classical music was very it was kind of elite sounding. You know what I mean? There was a way to play it, and it was like a whole almost like ceremony listening to a set of works, and that still exists to some extent. But I think period instruments kind of made it a little more exciting, really. It kind of, you don't really know what's going to happen. Yeah. These guys, it's exciting, but nevertheless, these one of the interesting things about Baroque era instruments, if you're playing on period instruments, and especially period brass, is that they don't blend together very well, and that is kind of interesting because now you can hear all the lines kind of, very clearly. That was a real revelation for me. And back in the day, it's one reason why I still love hearing Baroque music on period instruments today. I think that what's really sold me. Okay, so that we got right to the Biber Requiem. I just want to say this work is nothing like what I kind of expected from Biber, because I kind of think of him as being spacious, and this is really a very composed work. Like you said, the interlocking brass with the vocals are there, and that was really the main thing that I heard in this too. Yeah. The beautiful sound, and then we get another sonata after that by Johann Joseph Fuchs, and then a choral work by him, Omnis Terra Adoret.
Those were very enjoyable too.
Yeah, the whole album. The
program really unites well, start to finish, with these different composers, and the sheen that they put over it matches the overall characteristics, and you get a nice sort of start to finish journey here. I think I've listened to this 3 or 4 times this week. I liked it that much.
Excellent program, excellent sound. I highly recommend this. Give it a listen, everybody.
Indeed, I really like this one.
Okay. All right, now the next thing we're going to talk about is we talked about Piazzolla's the 100th anniversary of his birth last week, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this week we've got another anniversary. Actually, we've got 2. There's a hidden one in here too. We've got 2 discs, 2 albums that were released a week apart from each other. One is on Bis and one is on Harmonia Mundi. Of music from Proust, Salons of Marcel Proust, the French writer, the author of In Search of Lost Time, à la recherche de temps perdu. Some listeners might remember it in English as Remembrance of Things Past. They've changed the translation of it, which is actually a good thing in this case.
Yeah, these are interesting in that, how can I say, they're sort of recreations of programs of, a period. So as a theme or a list of works following a previous performance, a historical performance is kind of unique and interesting in its own right. And I found that kind of intriguing because we don't hear a lot of this type of thing in a selection of material.
Yeah, not only that, but this happens to be like one of my favorite eras in music, in classical music history. Like I said, the late 19th, early 20th century, right up until World War II began, when everything got ruined.
Especially in French music, like we have here. So.
Yeah, this was like this is only the beginning of what was going to happen in France too, because Debussy and Ravel came afterwards.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, this year, 2021, happens to be the 150th anniversary of Proust's birth. Okay, so this is an anniversary year idea. These programs were put together for him. By the way, Proust died when he was 51 years old. So next year is going to be the 100th anniversary of his death. Oh. So I guess it's a 2-year festival.
Need more recordings, maybe.
I get a 2-year celebration. I don't know how many of these they can do. Anyway, we've got 2 of these. Now, the first one I want to talk about is called Proust le Concert Retrouvé. And this is by our good friend Theotime Langlois de Swart. He of the amazing name that we heard on an earlier recording that we talked about. This was, what was it called?
2, I think. Yeah. Duo by Duo. The Mad
Lover.
The Mad Lover, that's it, yes.
And I found out, actually, he's on another recording that I have that I actually sent to you of music by Pierre Dandrieu, who is a French Baroque composer, and Corelli is also on that. Music is also on that record, and that was an amazing record too. So I was really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's on Harmonia Mundi, right?
Not only that, but I got the disc, and it turns out that Langlois de Swart plays the Davidoff Stradivarius violin made in 1708. So one of the best violins in the world, an old Stradivarius.
And it does sound sweet. It sounds very sweet, yes.
It does. And Tanguy de Williencourt is the pianist on this, and he's playing an Erard piano from 1891. Now, Erard pianos, this is a sound that's really gone out. It's a little bit of... It's not as full as a modern grand piano.
It's a bit bright and shallow compared to a full piano, but not in a bad way.
There's a little bit of a tinkly sound to it, and it's got a fast action. Now, this is pretty interesting because it means that works that were written for the Erard piano, mostly Austrian works, things by Hummel and Mendelssohn and things like that, were written with this fast action in mind. And then you don't hear a lot of these works today because the modern grand piano's action isn't as fast as the Erard's was. So a lot of that music has gone out of style, but pianists are bringing it back as they now that they have these superhuman techniques and can do anything. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway. This not only so there's that. So we're going to actually have a recreation of a sound of the era too. We're not going to hear this on a modern 9-foot grand piano. So that was exciting, getting me more excited still. And then I looked at the program and oh man, these are all my favorite composers on here. They play Gabriel Fauré. The centerpiece would be the first violin sonata, a piece I absolutely love.
That's very nice.
Yeah, Après un rêve, which is a song, and also the Berceuse, which is a violin and piano short piece for violin piano, and there are a few other solo works too. We'll get to those in a minute.
There's a few piano pieces on here. Chopin, Prelude.
Yeah, basically this seems to be Tanguy de Williencourt's album because he gets a few solos, and Langlois de Theotime Langlois de Swart is his plays along a few times. Let me go through this a little bit because I have a few things to say about this album. It wasn't as exciting as I was a little bit let down by this. I'll explain why. Okay. Although I liked it enough, I guess. Okay. First of all, Reynaldo Hahn, Proust's lover, apparently. Okay. He was one of the great, one of the most promising composers of the era. We have his song A Chloris. Okay, first, this is an arrangement for violin and piano, and this sounds okay. It's got its famous piano accompaniment, which makes it really memorable. We get a Robert Schumann piece, Des Abends. This is a solo by Williencourt, and he sounds quite good on here. You get to hear the sound of the instrument there. Okay, and then the next piece really interested me. This is the Raindrop Prelude by Chopin, which everybody will probably know. Maybe you don't know the name, but you've heard it before. Now, I was really interested in this because the Erard piano was Chopin's instrument of choice. Now, this is an 1891 Erard. Chopin would have played in 1830, 1841, which would have sounded a lot lighter. But it was interesting to hear this. I was very... but as an aside, by the way, I always wonder why we don't hear more recordings of Chopin's music on an Erard piano of the period. I guess pianists like to just play it on the big 9-foot grand. There have been a few, but not that many. I'm kind of interested in the whole sound that Chopin was hearing at the time. All right. So on this piece, it's kind of interesting to hear, because when you hear this piece, usually you hear by the time you get to the middle and those big bass chords come out, it just sounds like thunder emerging from the piano. And that doesn't happen here. Now, this is not the pianist's fault. The instrument doesn't deliver that kind of gigantic sound, but you get this big sounding bass tone out of that, and that's enough. But the thing is, this is a solo. This is Tanguy de Williencourt is playing this solo, and this piece has been played by all the greatest pianists who have ever lived. They've all recorded it, and he kind of lacks in a bit of poetry in this piece. And to be honest, in general, I'll get to that. He plays it well. It's pleasant enough to listen to, but I was just kept wanting to hear, like, say, someone like Evgeny Kissin or somebody like that, in a piece like this, who could really bring out all the poetry in it. So anyway, so that was I was willing to forgive that because of what was coming. Okay, next comes the Fauré Sonata for violin and piano. I love this piece to the skies. It's very positive, and it's ecstatic. They play it well. Okay, the first movement goes along at a nice pace without the levels of ecstasy I've heard in other recordings, but it was very pleasant until the very end. I was really waiting for the big payoff. There's this very high violin note in the coda right before the first movement ends, and it just kind of sustains that, and there's this wonderful wave of arpeggios supporting it underneath in the piano normally. Now, when Theotime Langlois de Swart plays this, he loses the top note under the piano. He plays it quietly for some reason, and it just drove me crazy. I just felt kind of let down by that. I really wanted to hear the big release, that big ecstatic point. He actually gets lost in the piano arpeggio that sweeps over him. He kind of gave me the image of a surfer who had fallen off his board and just got swept by a wave is what I thought of. And I had that in mind for the next three movements, which were all very good. Okay, no complaints there. All right. After that comes the Berceuse, another piece that I love. And in this piece, Langlois de Swart, the violinist, the entry has to be quiet, which he does, but it has to be in a full tone, just very quiet. And Langlois de Swart's tone is kind of like, feels like it's kind of like flaky instead of like this full round kind of sound. So he kind of lost his tone in the beginning, and then when the phrase repeats the second time, then he's okay. But he's losing his sound when he plays quietly here. So I kind of, not my favorite performance of this piece, though it's nice enough. Okay, and here's where then we get to François Couperin, Le Barricade Mystérieuse, and this is where we have a bunch of pieces coming up where Tanguy de Williencourt is playing solo, and this is the low point of the disc. Okay, let me explain this. The Couperin work is a Baroque era work, and I believe this work works best when it's played in a steady rhythm, and you can hear all of these sort of like subtle sort of like changes of melody in the repeating figuration. Okay, it's subtle. It's a subtle work, and it comes across in a steady melody. But Tanguy de Williencourt in this case plays it almost like a romantic work. He speeds it up and slows it down, and I feel like he just loses the entire character of the piece by doing that. This is a pianist I feel like his idea of expression is like, has to do it's in tempo and things like that, and he doesn't have much subtlety in his playing. The next piece is an arrangement of Après un rêve by Gabriel Fauré with the violin. Then comes Fauré's Nocturne Number 6. All right, this piece in Tanguy de Williencourt's hands sounds prosaic. It's a word. A nocturne it's a night piece. It's supposed to be full of mystery and moonlight, and it sounds like he's just reading this off the score. He hasn't really thought about it too much. Fauré's nocturnes are really subtle, And in the best recordings of them ever made, and really of all of Fauré's recordings, were made in the 1950s by a pianist by the name of Germain Thysens de Valentin. Now, this is a very old recording. It's in mono, and I'm really not too crazy about the matte finish of the recordings made in that era, though her playing is spectacular. I like the shinier, glossier modern productions. Stephen Hough also plays this piece and plays it exceptionally well on his Hyperion recording, Stephen Hough's French album, which is really all worth hearing. So look for that, everybody. So I felt like Tanguy de Williencourt kind of lets down the side here. He then plays, surprisingly, Richard Wagner's Isolde's Liebestod in an arrangement by Liszt, okay, Franz Liszt. Now at this point I was thinking, okay, this isn't a guy who really emotes very much at the piano, and this is a piece where you have to emote a lot. This is like high romanticism. But he actually puts this piece across fairly well. Again, he's not a terribly hard-on-sleeve composer, but I think it's Liszt's arrangement that allows like a lot of this to come through. A lot of the detail in the piano writing comes out on this, which probably because of the instrument, and of course, I want to give the pianist credit for that. Tanguy de Williencourt's weighting of the notes. Another aside, can you imagine Franz Liszt playing an Erard piano? These would have been the pianos that were available to him, and he must have just destroyed them because he had this giant monster technique. Yeah. I mean, I think it would have been like what do you call it? Like a demolition derby or something, pianist versus piano. I kind of had a kind of joke scene imagining that in my novel Extreme Music, except that the piano wins in my version. Okay. But yeah, Liszt, he was vanquisher of pianos back in the day. These days, the piece of industrial equipment that is the modern 9-foot grand piano doesn't allow that to happen. Pianos haven't become big and mighty the way they were back in the day, or at least compared to the instruments they played. All right, so anyway, that's kind of a nice thing. And then at the end we have another Reynaldo Hahn piece to send us off, Le Exquise. This is a song arrangement. Again, Hahn wrote a lot of songs, and this is very nice. Okay, so I thought this was this album was decent, but it kind of let me down. I just think it could have been so much more. If we had really great performances on this would have been a disc I would listen to again and again. So anyway, do you want to say anything about this before I go to the next one? Or?
Well, I enjoyed it. Yeah. More so, De Swart, having listened, when we listened to The Mad Lover, and I was intrigued by his playing. And mostly his sound. He has this very sweet, I won't call it bright sound. It's not bright, it's sweet. Maybe, and it's probably a combination of that wonderful instrument he has and his technique. Fantastic, and his approach. Yeah. And so on this, listening into this recording and knowing some of the works, I enjoyed it overall. And I have to say that I didn't make anything noteworthy about the piano performance, but rather, the piano pieces I thought were adequate, but nothing stunning. But I kept coming back to the sound of the violin, and his phrasing and tone is what I really like a lot about his playing. And he's rather young, so
both of them are.
Yeah, and so I'm sure they'll grow. But I'm interested in the variety of music that De Swart is taking. He seems to be quite active, and so I just enjoyed the program, and I thought at least the pairing of all the pieces together worked really well.
Yeah, I like the program a lot.
Yeah, and so it's an enjoyable sort of program, and imagining it as a sort of recital piece in that time, I thought, wow, what a great period.
Let's just say if I were there,
I
would have loved this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I like this.
I should mention, by the way, Fauré figures heavily in Proust concerts because he was very much the composer of the day in the French salons, and Proust himself loved Fauré's music. Also, Langlois de Swart, this violinist, he's apparently got most of his experience in Baroque music because he plays that exceptionally well. I think this is kind of a new thing for him playing. Well, he must have played it in school, of course, but this recording for romantic music, it requires something a little different than Baroque music. You really have to kind of fill in the emotional spaces. That's not all in the score. Okay, that really has to do with the way you weight notes or the way you approach cadences. You usually kind of want to delay it a little bit and stuff like that. And I don't know, I feel like they don't really, especially Tanguy de Williencourt, I don't really know much about him. I haven't heard any of his other recordings, so I don't want to judge him or anything like that. But I just feel like he was a little, he needs to work on his romantic repertoire, let's just say. Or at least play the Baroque repertoire, the couperin, in the steady rhythm that it should be played in. All right, well, this is a double header. Fortunately, we have another Proust Salon, this one by Stephen Isserlis on the cello and Connie Shih on the piano. That's Shih, S-H-I-H.
Is that Shih or is that Shih?
Is it Shih?
I don't know. It's his Chinese name?
It's a Chinese name.
Yeah, maybe
but she's Canadian. She's Canadian, so is it Shih? I would say Shih, like the dog, a Shih Tzu.
Well, it's been a long time since I've studied Chinese, so
yeah. But I don't know. Okay, it could be sure. Anyway,
sure. Sure.
Forgive us.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Anyway, here we go.
Here comes the hate mail. Yeah. All right. Well, forgive us, Chinese listeners, for not knowing Chinese. If it was a Japanese name, we'd be okay, though. I think.
Then it'd be
anyway.
all right.
Anyway, Isserlis. Yeah, this is a great cellist, one of the best in the world today.
He's one of the finest.
And his quality you can hear right from the beginning. There's a night and day difference between these two recordings, I feel. The first piece we get is again Reynaldo Hahn, again a regular at Proust's feature at Proust Salons, being that he was with Proust for a while. But this isn't a song transcription. This is a set of variations, and it starts out really well. We get Isserlis' very deep, emotive tone. It's just fantastic to listen to. Not only that, I want to say this Beast recording is on an SACD, and it just sounds fantastic. It's just a really big, deep live sound. So you get that extra quality direct stream digital recording. It's fantastic. All right, we get some more Fauré. This time, two short works, Romance and Elegy. Both played fairly slowly, and this is nice. I want to mention, by the way, the pianist is fantastic on this recording too, Connie Shih.
I have a recording from 1995 of Isserlis playing Fauré. I think I got it from you, probably about I know 20
the one.
years ago.
I think the César Franck work is on that too.
Franck is on that as well. But I compared the two, and I like this better. Maybe it's the pianist's contribution to it.
I think the pianist on that one was Stephen Huff, which is pretty impressive.
Or it's just growing or whatever. But I just found this one, well, I don't know, more passionate, especially the elegy. It starts out sort of very subdued, but it builds into very passionate expression here, and I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah, this is a great recording.
Yeah, and this is a great duo. Shih leaves a lot of room for Isserlis to emote and really dig into his tone. You can hear him, taking the time to really dig into the tone and get the quality that he wants out of it. It's really just fantastic to listen to. It's really amazing. This really is a great performance. Okay, next is one of the two. There are two centerpieces on this album. The first one is Camille Saint-Saëns, and this is the hidden anniversary that I had hinted at before, because it is the what is it? Oh, it's the 200th anniversary of Saint-Saëns' birth this year. Is that right?
Happy birthday! Is it?
Yeah, happy 200th. birthday, which I think it has already passed. I should probably make sure that I got that right. I'm sure I wrote it down somewhere, but I'm not finding my things in my notes today. All right, let me just do a quick search here. Saint-Saëns was born. Come on, 1821, right? No. Okay, I'm sorry. I got it wrong. It's the 100th anniversary of his death. Sorry. He died in 1921. He was born in 1835. Okay. He was, in fact, he died on 16 December 1921, a day before Beethoven's birthday. How about that? Okay, so the 100th anniversary of Camille Saint-Saëns' death. Okay, and we have a Saint-Saëns work here. Now, Saint-Saëns figures in Proust's history in an interesting way because in Swann's Way, there's a composer by the name of Vinteuil, and he writes a violin sonata that gets played at a salon, much like one of the ones that Proust would have held. And there's a theme in it, this little melody. There's a word that he specifically uses for it. A little phrase, okay? It's in petit phrase, I think they say in French. But it becomes the theme of Swann's love for Odette. And then it kind of plays through as this theme. And at the end, when Odette he realizes that Odette doesn't love him and she's seeing other men, the little phrase kind of changes its quality for him. It's still the same phrase, but it has a different feeling. Okay, and it's said that little phrase was inspired by a phrase in Camille Saint-Saëns' first violin sonata, not cello sonata. Okay. But here we have the first cello sonata, being that we have a cello and piano duo, and this is pretty interesting. It's got, again, great depth of tone. I was just really overwhelmed by Isserlis' playing all the way through, with this big dramatic first movement, and the middle movement, the slow middle movement, and the third movement are both fairly short. Apparently, originally the finale, the last movement, was longer, and we are given that as well on this recording. The Allegro quasi presto is the original finale of this sonata.
Yeah, original version.
Yeah, apparently Saint-Saëns' mother didn't like it and told him to shorten it. So
well, it's almost 9 minutes long, so
yeah, but that's okay. I mean,
yeah,
you know. Yeah, but the replacement one is really kind of I'm not coming up with words for this. It's short and very I'm thinking of words like dramatic and powerful, but it's something else. It's kind of like
I don't know, but you shouldn't take advice.
It kind of moves ahead pretty quickly.
Shouldn't take advice from your mother on your compositions. Yeah. That's bad.
Well, Saint-Saëns was that kind of guy, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. His mom was very domineering, apparently. He apparently grew up among women. Actually, his aunt, I think, was a big influence on him, too. I may be confusing him with Proust, though, but I think they had similar...
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Okay, next we get a... Lamento from Henri Duparc from his cello sonata in A minor, and this is a bit of a discovery. It's a very
what's
short
up with this
piece.
One? I've never heard this one before, and this is only the second movement. What happened to the rest of this?
They talk about that in the booklet. I'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please enlighten me, because that was a curiosity to me.
Yeah, they excerpted it because. I don't remember why. Let me see. Because the booklet, by the way, if you get the Super Audio CD, the booklet notes are written by Isserlis himself, and he's an excellent writer.
Oh.
He's written a few books, in fact, about music as well. And for not academic books, they're for like the layman, and he's very funny and very witty. Let me see here. Okay. This guy, reputation, Henri Duparc. His reputation rests entirely on a collection of 17 songs, all composed before the age of 37, at which point mental illness overtook him, with the result that he composed nothing more for the almost 50 remaining years of his life.
Wow.
Well, at least he didn't die young like Hans Rothe last week.
Yeah. What was he doing for the rest of those 50 years?
Yeah, and destroyed much of what remained from his fertile years. A student cello sonata composed in his late teens did survive in manuscript. We present here the slow movement, a song without words evocatively titled Lamento. Proust seems to have felt that one of Duparc's most famous songs, L'Invitation au Voyage, suffered from too many notes, but he could scarcely have leveled accusation at this little gem. A little gem it is. I wanted to hear the rest of it.
Yeah, me too.
And I really wish they had recorded that. Although this is
very nice,
Yeah, this is an 83-minute album, so that's probably the reason why we didn't hear the rest of it. In fact, if they had left this off, it would have been an 81-minute album.
Yeah.
They squeezed this whole thing onto this one Super Audio CD. The next piece is a piece by Auguste Holmes, a composer also who I haven't ever heard of. And Isserlis gives a pretty colorful picture of her, too. She's apparently a very strong, domineering woman. I shouldn't say domineering. That's such an old-fashioned word. People don't like it. Okay. She was a fiery character. Okay.
Sounds dangerous. Run away.
And she seems to have captured the hearts of most of the male musicians of Paris. I'm reading from the booklet now, so these aren't my words, okay?
Whips
no copyright
and
infringements, okay? Yeah, okay. Particularly those of Saint-Saëns and César Franck, who kind of hated each other. So maybe this is why they both liked this one woman. She was also a fierce patriot, both French and Irish, a talented singer. And she was and the mother, scandalously, of 5 illegitimate children.
Sounds like a novel in there somewhere.
Yeah, I know, right? Something you didn't do back in those days. Okay, that was kind of...
Wow.
Your reputation was important back then. The highlight of her career was the extraordinary performance at the 1889 Paris Exhibition Universelle, so the World's Fair, I guess, celebrating the centenary of the French Revolution, of her cantata La Triomphe de la République, Ode Triomphale, which involved around 1,200 performers. Good God.
Wow.
In addition to composing the music and the text, this woman was a monster. Man, Holmes designed the costumes. Boy, you were talking about dedicated. And stipulated that almost all the principal performers have blonde hair.
Wow.
And actually, the word is written out in this, okay?
Wow.
Okay, 30,000 people are said to have attended the first performance. That would be like Madison Square Garden numbers, I think. Or even more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a small hockey rink or like a small baseball stadium, I guess.
30,000.
Wow. 30,000, yeah. That's a baseball stadium. Average-sized baseball stadium in the major leagues. Okay, nevertheless, Holmes was subsequently honored by becoming a Chevalier of the Légion d'honneur. Okay, so she got... Proust does not appear to have been a great fan of Holmes's. Perhaps he felt that she was a rival to Hahn, but he did play her songs, and he thanked 2 pages of hers for assisting this great artist. Okay, so this performance of this piece, La Vision de la Reine, is also a cantata. It's from a cantata, also to her own text. And this is an arrangement of that. Okay, and it was nice. I liked it a lot. Arranged by Stephen Isserlis himself. Okay, now last we have the César Franck Violin Sonata in A major. Okay, now this is an arrangement for the cello. It was made months after the Violin Sonata was published. Okay, I'm going to tell you who did it. It does not. It says it's here somewhere. Okay, the French cellist Jules Dessart made a transcription for cello, and the work was okay. So he now calls it a sonata for violin or cello. But let me just say, okay, first of all, this is a great performance. This is the best performance of this work I've ever heard on the cello.
Well,
but not on the violin. Okay, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I know this piece very well. But after I listened to this, I started to think, I want to hear all violin sonatas on the cello because it's
did
so
you really?
Good. Yeah, I really liked it.
It's pretty fantastic. It's really deep. He brings out like all the emotional things I get from the violin versions of it.
Yeah, I'm going to mention this coming up soon, but I can listen to some violin music and I like it, but there's something about the violin, it's that range that sometimes it just hits that nerve in my head too many times. And then I have to, I can listen to one work, 3 or 4 movements, and that's enough for me at one sort of sitting. But I never feel that way about cello because, cello to me is just the range of the instrument and the closeness to the human voice that
I think it's the full range of the human voice from the lowest bass notes to the high soprano notes.
And so, some like Sunday afternoons or something, I can listen to multiple cello works and, they just put me at ease and the range sort of gives me comfort. Whereas sometimes the cello the violin hits that button that just, the hairs on my neck stand up and I'm like, ugh, okay. Yeah. So listening to, this work, which I know mainly from violin, and Isserlis' playing of it is really, really nice. And so, I really enjoyed this work, and sort of closing out things on here. I thought, this is great.
Yeah, they play it so well too. And a key point: the pianist is very much an equal partner in this, because he's got some, or she in this case, has some serious piano figuration and to play. Okay, it's almost like a solo piano work with a violin on it. Yeah. So Connie Shih, okay, is I couldn't get I looked for the pronunciation of her name. I couldn't find it. Anyway, is just is fantastic in this too. This might be the second best performance of this work I've ever heard on violin or cello. My favorite performance of the Franck Violin Sonata is by the legendary recording by Kyung-Hwa Chung and Radu Lupu from the 1970s. It's kind of definitive to me. And one thing that I didn't like about this particular performance, and it's not the performance, it's the arrangement. In the last movement, it's a canon. So the cello will repeat what the piano plays and vice versa. Mm-hmm. There are some points when the piano is playing in the higher range, and the violin would be above the piano, but the cello can't get up that high, so it's kind of below it, and it sort of gets lost under there, and it has to do with the harmonics and things like that. So that kind of bugged me. I really wanted to hear that line more clearly. There wasn't much you can do about it because of the arrangement, but nevertheless, I like this a lot. This is a highly recommended recording. I recommend this if you're going to listen to this one over the previous one that we talked about. All right, highly recommended. It's a more polished.
I appreciate the two younger musicians, though. I think they're very promising. I think
so too. I'm not dismissing them by any means. I just kind of found some of those.
And I like this sort of
lacking.
A historical program from a period approach. It's another way of looking at, assembling some pieces together, and it sort of makes you imagine that you're there at that time, listening to something in a venue that we don't have today. So
and how great that would have been when all this music was new, and it's amazing music. I just love all of this stuff. Yeah. Okay, I'm kind of sorry to leave it now. Anyway, we're going on to the next. The last of the classical recordings for this week is, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, Lise Davidsen. Okay, soprano. This is her new album called Beethoven, Wagner, Verdi, and it also has works by Cherubini and Mascagni on it too. Now, last week, it was 2 weeks ago, when we talked about Sandrine Piot and her recording of the four last songs of Richard Strauss, among other things. I gave my my particle versus wave theory of the soprano voice, and I mentioned that Sandrine Piot her voice was more of the particle type of soprano, where it kind of would change its color. Now, Lise Davidsen, this young Wagnerian soprano, is very much the wave version of the soprano voice. This is this gigantic voice that can just cast this beam of sound to the ends of the universe.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I was lost in the undertow on this one, but I'll let you finish your
well, I sort of was too. And
first.
I sort of was too, and there's a reason for that. Now, the thing is, I was kind of excited to hear this because her previous album, she sang the Strauss four last songs, and they were spectacular. She has the perfect voice for those. It's this big, strong voice, and it's got like a dark sort of kind of quality to part of it. It's not a very. It's hard to say. It's not a bright sounding voice, not a bright timbre, but it's a bright voice. But it's got like some darkness in it. And just perfect for those kind of German lieder. Now, in this particular recording, she goes for, first of all, some lighter works. There are two, there's an aria from Beethoven's only opera, Fidelio. Now, Beethoven, despite being thought of as a romantic composer, really is still sort of in the classical era. He himself is changing it, but he's not really a romantic composer all the way.
In the classical.
Yeah, he's still rooted in the classical, even though he's kind of like damaging it irreparably. Okay.
In a good way.
In a good way. In a way that we enjoy. Yeah. All right. And when I heard this aria, I was like, this voice was just huge in this. I've never heard a Leonore. She's playing Leonore in this. With a voice this big. I was wondering if it was right for this opera. I was it's a huge voice.
Well, I got to tell you, I listened to this a couple times during the week, and I have where I am now at my desktop station, I have a smaller, I have bookshelf speakers, and I still a pretty powerful amp where I listen here. And I decided to go listen on my, downstairs system, which we listen to together sometimes. Have rather large speakers and that. And, I like to listen to not super loud music, but, normally I'll listen, say maybe like peaks of 85 decibels or something, nothing ear-shattering. But on this recording, I had to keep continually turning down the volume because that's every piece builds to crescendo with the soprano voice that just kept hitting that nerve right between my eyes or ear. My third eye was going blind from that sort of
She closed your third eye.
Yeah, she closed my third eye because that voice is so powerful. It just hits that resonance in my my whole head starts to vibrate. Because
but nevertheless, voices like this are unique and exciting, really, sure. When given the right repertoire. Okay, now in the Beethoven, this is Abscheuliche, wo eilst du hin is the aria. The fury that she conjures up in this aria is formidable. You don't want to cross this character, this Leonore. Oh, she's gonna win in the end. Okay, this ringing and almost I even wrote here almost deafening high notes at the end. Yeah. Okay, surely capable of breaking glass. Yes. I remember.
I think I'm missing a couple wine glasses too. They're in that cabinet on the side of the room.
Yeah. Oh boy, yeah, I was going to say something more about that. Okay, but here's the thing. Next, we have this aria, an Italian aria by Beethoven called A Perfido, and it's just a concert work written in the late 18th century. So this is before he started writing his big major works. I think his early piano sonatas were coming out at this time. So he's still very much in the classical era here, and I felt that Davidsen's voice was way too heavy for this. Like, I can't imagine her singing this, or forget about Mozart. She's just too big for it. Okay, the next comes Luigi Cherubini's Dal tuoi figli la madre from the opera Medea. This is an aria I hadn't heard before, and it's a real oddity. It doesn't really kind of take center stage, really. It sort of sounds like something like a work that you'd sing on the way to something else. It was okay. But okay, now here's where things start going awry. We hear an aria from Mascagni's opera Cavalleria Rusticana. This is by Santuzza, Voi lo sapete. Okay, and in this case, she's this character Santuzza is confessing to her friend that she's had an affair with this guy who's also having an affair with someone else.
Oh, gosh.
Because it's Italian opera. Let me tell you something. If you want a safe space, you don't want to go to an opera house. All kinds of things are going on that stage that just we're not even supposed to be talking about now. Okay. All right. Anyway, Santuzza is very vulnerable in this aria. Okay, and you feel when you hear like a really great like practitioner of this role singing, you're really moved. You feel for her, even though she's kind of like, well, the thing is, we modern people, we kind of think, oh, so big deal. She's like, she's shagging some guy, but this is the 19th century in Sicily, and you don't do that because that could result in your death. Okay, but so she's really kind of scared and vulnerable, and we don't hear that in Lise Davidsen's voice. This voice is big and strong and can't really bend itself into like a kind of vulnerable, kind of sensitive tone, and I was a little disappointed by that. The next aria on this is by Verdi, Pace Pace Mio Dio. This is another heroic one, and she's okay in this, but again, I feel the voice is too big for the role. In this case is who is she in this? This is it from Forza del Destino. Okay, and then after that she does Desdemona's very delicate Ave Maria piena di grazia. This is the prayer, the Hail Mary prayer, before she's going to confront
This is the one I
Othello
liked
and be
best,
killed.
because this was the one where I felt like it wasn't overwhelming for me, and so just in terms of dynamics and sort of leveled performance, when I finally got to this after being bombarded with that, super powerful voice, I thought there was a little bit of restraint in this one. And then I thought, I'm back on sort of my even ground with listening here. Even though it was not outstanding compared to the other performances, this is where I sort of gained composure again in the listening experience.
Yeah, I want to say about that. Part of the reason I think you feel that, though, and this started with noticeably in the Mascagni and then the two Verdi arias, she's recorded further away, I think, from the mic in these. And I think it's to quieten her sound. And I didn't really appreciate that much because you can't really hear the
It could be a
quality
mic
of the
technique.
voice.
You're right there. I mean, with an instrument like that, the engineers probably have to make some, decisions about microphone placement and different things.
Yeah, but again, Desdemona knows she's going to her death when she's singing this aria, and I'm not really getting that from this voice. This voice isn't. It can't project that vulnerability. Mm-hmm. She's going to be a great Brunhilde one day in the Ring operas, or a great Isolde in Tristan and Isolde. And speaking of which, this album closes out with Richard Wagner's Wesendonck Lieder. Two of these were studies for Tristan and Isolde, so this could be Davidsen's calling card for that. And she sounds pretty great in these. Okay, she just sounds very at home in German opera, and especially in these big kind of Wagner and Strauss were really written for her, and I think I'm looking forward to hearing her in those big opera productions. She's only 34 years old. Sopranos don't usually sing Wagner operas until they're in their 40s because they tend to blow out your voice, and by then you're kind of at your peak voice and you don't really have much to look forward to in your 50s and 60s anyway, so that's when you sing them. Okay, so these were great. It ends on a very a high note, to make a little pun there. The Wesendonck Lieder are very well played, and these are the highlight of the disc, really. You'd want to hear this for the Wesendonck Lieder. I don't feel like this soprano, though, is suited to the more vulnerable characters in Italian opera, though. She's not a very lyrical singer. Her Italian is fine, though. She does sing the language well, pronounces all the words well, sounds kind of, the way an Italian singer would sing, would sound singing the words, but I'm not getting that vulnerability or that sensitivity that's required for those operas. So there you go. I think this is I think if you've never heard the singer before, definitely hear her previous album with the 4 last songs on it. She also does Strauss's song Morgen on that. Anyway, this is a spectacular new talent. She's going to be a great Wagnerian soprano. I can't wait to hear those recordings when she finally does them in the next 10 years or so. This disc, though, I don't know. I thought it was just okay.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I'm not a huge opera fan. I can enjoy an actual full performance where I can follow the story and a mix of voices, but like a full onslaught of all soprano
I know.
voice, I was sort of nailed. My head was nailed to my back wall in my room in this, and I was overwhelmed a bit because the voice is. I mean, what an instrument she has, but it was just too much for me. Overall, in the right context, sure. I mean, I'm everything I read about her is that she's the talent of a generation and that. But like you say, perhaps it's a choice of material where her talents are best applied. Maybe more German than Italian in the field, as you say.
Yeah,
but I'm not anywhere near even an experienced listener in this field, so.
I can't think of an Italian role she can play, because even strong, these really strong Italian women characters what is that? I'm forgetting this. The Puccini opera Tosca. She has her vulnerable moments too, like in Visidarte, and I don't see that Lise Davidsen is going to be able to, put across the pathos of that aria either. Okay, but anyway. Strauss, Wagner, bring them all on. I'm ready to hear her in those.
Oh, jeez.
All right.
Glad she's not my neighbor, though, because that voice could move walls. Wow. What a sound.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've had enough vitamin soprano for
vitamin soprano. That's right.
Actually,
we've got some more soprano, but not in the voice.
Oh, what do you got?
Up. Yeah. Is that? That's the end of the classical picks for this
segment.
Week. All right. So now it's jazz time.
Yeah.
Adult music listeners, and so got some really good choices for you this week. Now, last week we focused on European jazz exclusively, and actually I ordered several of those Snorri Kirk releases.
So I ordered them on CD. Actually.
Yeah, so did I. And they're hard to find a bit. Mine are coming from Germany. I could find one in Japan. I think I got Blues Modernism already, and actually, I can't find the Going Up one on CD yet.
I'm looking forward to that coming out on CD.
I bought that on high res from Presto.
Oh, you did buy it, huh?
Yeah, just the download. And from Germany, I've got the Beat, which is my favorite one.
Yeah, I like that one too.
That's coming from Germany with that.
Yeah, I don't have the CD yet, but I did hear it on Deezer.
I'm going to get it in next week or something. That with that dirty sax. Yeah. That is I love that. Yeah. So I thought I'd start this week staying in Europe, and then we'll go to the two U.S. picks. So the first one, this is actually a Deezer pick of the week. It came to me before I even was looking for what I wanted to look at. And this is by the Italian saxophonist Stefano Di Battista. And it's called Morricone Stories. So you can imagine what it's about.
It's got a great album cover, too, which will kind of tell you a little more what it's about.
Nice album.
Can you describe that?
Cover, yeah. Well, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I can't. It's really tiny, but it's like the four guys in the band are all dressed in black, and they're approaching the camera like four cowboys in a Morricone movie. And one of them is holding his. Is that a saxophone? I can't really see it from
sax
here.
He's got there. Yeah,
he's holding his sax like it's a rifle.
Yeah.
With the mouthpiece out, which would be the end of the gun. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
So this is on Warner Classics, and so Di Battista is he's born in 1969, and he's an Italian sax player. He plays soprano and alto. And internationally, and with an American jazz scene, he's played with artists like Jimmy Cobb and the late Nat Adderley. So, he's got an international career and known in the American jazz scene too. And here he's got an album of purely Morricone compositions. So Morricone, of course, the great film composer, Italian film composer who composed the soundtracks for more than 500 films, if you can believe that, and who
they used
passed
to churn
away.
them out, huh?
Yeah,
back in the
500.
day.
How you couldn't even remember that many, But Morricone passed away last year, in 2020, in July, and so interestingly here, Battista has chosen a kind of interesting selection among Morricone's works. So we've got some really well-known movie themes. For example, the theme from Once Upon a Time in the West, 1900, The Mission. So these are really well-known works by him. But we've also got some previously, one previously unreleased work, which was gifted to him by Morricone called Flora.
I was wondering why that didn't have a
this is
on it.
A really lovely melody. I am surprised that it was never used for anything. Maybe it was just something he composed and put up on the side. And then we've got some other lesser known melodies. I'm sure Battista chose them based on their melodic work. So we've got the theme from Fear Over the City. We've also got The Great Silence, Sunday Woman, The Mission, and then he saves, of course, the iconic Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for the very end.
Of course, everybody knows that. Yeah.
So, that's in contrast to the rest of the pieces, I felt, because Well, to begin with, Di Battista actually, on saxophone, not every saxophonist has a very good soprano sax tone. Some people play soprano sax, it sounds like a car horn. It can be a very ugly instrument. Yeah. But here, his soprano sax actually is a very nice tone. And, so he can use that to an effect melodically. And what I would say about the way he plays these, so of course, as a film composer, you need a particular skill in writing an immediate melody that matches a scene and sticks in the mind, which is part of Morricone's genius. And paying respect to that, Di Battista states the melodies with a lot of respect. I felt he always clearly plays the melody so that the listener will recognize the theme, and also before he embellishes upon it, he gives due respect to the composition that Morricone made before he goes into his improvisations. That said, he does take some very interesting, adventurous modern solos. Here, the Vorushka and Sunday Woman are quite adventurous in where he jumps onto in his improvisational meanderings. And then
I'll have to hear those again.
Yeah, they're really nice.
Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
And then also Deborah's theme from Once Upon a Time in America is a very tender ballad playing, and he plays this on alto. That's great. And then there's a nice effect from Fear Over the City. I don't know if it's him, but there's a whistling added to it from the original theme, which sort of creates the mood here. And so I thought that overall on the whole album, he balances, treating the melody with respect so that when, the average listener or anyone who listens to it say, that's that great melody. And then he carefully states that before he goes on to his sort of development in improvisation, which he doesn't hold back on, and shows his jazz chops really well. And then finally, when we get to the end, you can't really The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is not a great, beautiful melody. It's just iconic. And so what he does is have a lot of fun with here, and it becomes something really cool. So he plays this on soprano, and he turns it into a really sort of Coltrane-inspired kind of you can imagine this being on My Favorite Things as the last track. And what he does here in his improvisation after playing the melody on soprano is it's kind of a Coltrane inspired, like sheets of sound type of improvisation. However, he makes it a lot more bluesy than like a typical Coltrane solo would be. So I started to think, this is like sheets of sound, but really bluesy. So I thought, what do you call a blue sheet of sound? Is it a musical tarp? But that sounds very unattractive.
I think the sheets of sound description is very unattractive too. What they mean by that is when Coltrane, he's not playing individual notes. He's just going like.
So you've got a linear instrument.
It's like this.
A linear instrument who's able to delineate the harmonic patterns. Of course, this is a Coltrane.
I wish they'd come up with a different way to describe it than sheets of sound, though.
But I just, in my mind, when I put this sort of nomenclature to it, I thought, blues, is it a musical tarp? Yeah.
It's a musical tarp.
It's much more cool than that. He has a lot of fun with this, and the solo is great, and it's out there, and so it's really cool. So if you know Morricone's music, I think if you're a movie lover or just these compositions are really great, and he shows his jazz chops here really well, and I think as a soprano player, he has a very attractive tone too, and so it's a fun album, and well worth a listen. Also, let's see, Di Battista's on sax. We've got André Ceccarelli on drums, Frédéric Nardin on piano, and Daniele Sorrentino on bass. So that's his working group here.
Sounds like a bunch of Italians.
It sounds like a bunch of Italians and playing nice jazz. Well worth a listen, and it's a great concept album. And
it's a great sounding album too.
It's great sounding. Yeah,
each of the instruments is very clearly like separated, sort of in the whole mix. I guess, or it might just be the way they play. Like they just sort of like have this space. There's a lot of space. I felt like on this recording.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed just how clean like it all was. The playing and the recording itself. I didn't know most of these themes, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a lot of them I didn't know. I mean, I knew. I knew Once Upon a Time in America. I knew The Great Silence. I knew The Mission.
Well, I didn't know that theme because I don't know that movie as well.
Oh, okay.
I've seen it before, but I know.
And
The Great Silence I knew, and
of course the Flora, this newcomer, is a really lovely melody. I'm glad that he got that out there. Morricone is a great composer, and so this is a fun album, and I hope it gets Di Battista some more international exposure. Great concept.
Yeah, I recommend it. I liked it myself.
Yeah, it's a fun one. All right. And sticking with sax, moving on, another really interesting album, sax and piano. And this is called Magic Dance, the music of Kenny Barron, the great pianist. And this is on a record label called Wailing City Sound.
Really?
Label, yeah. And this is by the saxophonist, American saxophonist Greg Abate, I assume is of Italian lineage.
We're doing a lot of Italians on this show, boy.
Yeah, well, he's an American.
All right.
Anyway, this is a 2-CD set, and so about Abate, he was born in 1947 in Massachusetts. It's a very extensive jazz career. He played with the Artie Shaw Orchestra, and also Phil Woods, who was one of his mentors. You'll hear that clearly in his alto playing, inspired by the great Phil Woods. He also has played with Kenny Barron, the composer and pianist on this album, who has played with so many people over the years as a sideman, but he is a great jazz composer of original compositions, which this album is, celebrating.
It seems that way. I think we're gonna start hearing these the same way we hear, like, say, Monk's compositions played by a lot of.
This is an area in jazz where whenever a jazz musician gets established after playing the jazz standards and American Songbook and other people's compositions, then they make their own compositions. And, more recently, there's some groups that, for example, recently, not so recently, but maybe going back from the early 2000s on, there was a group called the New Composers Octet, which I saw them in Osaka with Freddie Hubbard, and they were sort of performing the compositions of, say, Freddie Hubbard, who wrote so many great jazz songs, and then their own compositions. So, they were young composers, but also basing their new ideas on these compositions of jazz greats that had made these great new songs, but other people afterwards hadn't really picked up. And we've seen sort of things like that with the Brian Lynch and Woody Shaw recordings in a Latin style or something like that. So, there's a lot of great jazz players that compose good tunes, but haven't been recorded enough by other musicians. So, this is a nice sort of treatment of that in all these great songs that Kenny Barron wrote over the years, and someone taking the time to go back and play these. So Kenny Barron himself, who's on this recording of his own compositions, born in 1943 in Philadelphia, and he's played with everyone from Dizzy Gillespie, James Moody, Freddie Hubbard, Booker Ervin, Yusef Lateef, and then there's a series of recordings with Stan Getz, and Kenny Barron that are really wonderful. I think it's called, I'm trying to think of the name, People Time, something like that.
Can't help you there.
Really wonderful. So this album is recorded at the great Van Gelder studios, the famous recording engineer, Rudy Van Gelder. And we've got Kenny Barron on piano, Desron Douglas on bass.
Did Van Gelder engineer the album?
No. He's dead.
He's
dead,
now,
yeah, but his studio is still there. And Jonathan Blake on drums. And so Abate has made new arrangements of Barron's original compositions, but he's taken a lot of liberties and, arranged and more than just arranging, but changed the key, written new intros, changed chord progressions on the solo sections for these songs to reimagine them. But Barron was on board with all of these developments to sort of, use his tunes as a focus, but also a building block for some new project. And so in most of Barron's works, we've got a mix of sort of post-bop tunes with also a lot of modal jazz here. Now, what's really interesting about this is that rather than calling other players, Abate decided to overdub himself on multiple instruments. So he creates saxophone sections and multiple layers on these. So there's up to, on some tunes, 2 altos, 2 tenors, and bari sax, creating sort of like a big band soli section on some of these things. And he's playing all of the parts of all these horns. If you look at the recording, check out the tune Voyage. It's got like a whole big band sax sectional with him overdubbing all of the parts. And then he also, for each tune, he thought very carefully when he chose a solo instrument, what's going to fit the mood and character of the piece. And so he's not only chose from saxophone, but he's got flute and soprano. So there's a great tune here, Water Lily. It's kind of a modal jazz tune, and he plays some beautiful flute on this. Yeah, it's got a sort of exotic character to it. And then right after that is a tune called Sonia Braga, and he switches to soprano sax on that. And then there's sort of a Bud Powell tribute. It's a very bebop-y type of tune called Bud Light. And
kind of sounds like Bud Light.
Yeah, Bud Light, but it's Bud Light.
It's Bud Light with a K.
And he plays a really fiery alto with sort of Phil Woods sort of inspired playing on it. So he's very versatile, playing all the saxes and flute, and paying a tribute to Barron and contributing a lot of arranging over 2 full CDs. So it's a large collection of music, but it takes you on a sort of journey, and you see the variety and expanse of Barron's original compositions treated very well and given special arrangements here. So I thought it was a really excellent recording by a sort of journeyman sax player who hasn't gotten a lot of recognition, but this is a sort of labor of love project, and I think it should be heard. If you're a fan of jazz saxophone, the
and
playing on here is
flute,
excellent.
As I am.
Yeah, flute too is really nice set. Yeah.
I wish there was more jazz flute. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
About this, this could very well be a landmark album in jazz if it really takes. Because it could establish Kenny Barron as a composer that people are going, or that people are going to start covering in the same way. Let's say, like you do a monk song or things like that. It would be great if like jazz could continue with that. For me, Kenny Barron, he's in his 70s now, isn't he?
Well, I think 1943.
He's been around for a while. Yeah,
late 70s. Yeah,
so he's been around, and I've only really discovered him back in 2015 when I started listening to like newer jazz. I had somehow missed him, and because I had heard jazz in college and things. I knew Charles Lloyd back then and things like that, but Kenny Barron is relatively new to me, and now it's nice because I'm starting to think of him because of this album as a composer. I know some of these compositions from his albums, his more recent albums. Concentric Circles came out a few years ago. So I'm just thinking this could start something new. I think it's it could wind up being, dare I say, an important album.
Yeah.
God knows we don't have many of those anymore. We need more.
I hope so. I hope we get some exposure.
I hope so too. It is nice. I liked it a lot. I liked all the whole the whole saxophone orchestra approach was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, your description of the Voyage kind of reminded me of, because you have to record these all these saxophone lines, and I just think of Enya, the new age kind of recording. I just kind of imagine what her producer must be like. Okay, now sing that line 800 times. You just have this just endless hall of mirrors of Enya.
When once would be more than enough for me, but
I liked her. I liked the first record she did. Not which one was that? A Watermark, and then they all kind of were the same as that afterwards.
Anyway, I really like this type of thing when we get a player like this, Greg Abate. A guy who has got his resume is really great, but he hasn't gotten the recognition he deserves, and then he throws his heart into something like this to another musician, and then the playing on it is outstanding, and I hope we get some recognition for this.
If it becomes a landmark, remember you heard about it first on the Adult Music Podcast.
Adult Music Podcast, right?
Yeah, predicting the future of music.
Yeah, give this one a listen. You'll definitely like it. There's a lot of variety and lots of sax and flute here. And so this is Greg Abate. We're going to move on to the final recording for this week. Another Greg, but not on saxophone. This is guitar, and this is Greg Skaff on his new release called Polaris. And this is on Smoke Sessions Records. And Skaff himself is from Kansas. And I don't know his age. He looks to be probably in his 50s. But his sort of main venue of playing has been with organ trios. He's played with Mike Ladon, one of my favorite
I like him
players.
Too. Yeah, I just like the Hammond organ in general.
Hammond organ in general. And he's also played with the great sax player Stanley Turrentine, who plays a lot with organists, and he's played with Freddie Hubbard and Orrin Evans. So he's done most of his recording with an organ, but so that makes this album sort of unique for him. It's his first guitar trio album, and so if you're familiar with the jazz format, you'll think when you have guitar and organ, you have two instruments capable of playing harmony or accompanying. And if you have an organ, the organ can also take over the bass, and can also play. That's my
favorite element of the
guys who are really good at the
funky bass kind of.
Yes, we saw.
Bass. It's got a different sound than a regular bass. It's kind of cool.
But so when you're playing in a guitar with an organ, the organ can also take over the harmony accompaniment. However, if you don't have that organ and you're just on guitar with a bass, you're left with the chord playing as well as most of the solo lead sort of playing. And so this is sort of the first recording of him in this format, and as sort of a landmark to start something like that, he's playing with the great Ron Carter on bass.
That's what stood out for me on this record.
Who is the most recorded bass player in jazz recording history, and
still going strong at his
in his 80s.
In his 80s, amazing.
Yeah. And so what makes this interesting too? So this is Ron Carter on bass, and on drums is Albert Heath. I think his nickname is Tootie, Albert Tootie Heath, who is the brother of Jimmy Heath, the great sax player.
We heard a record from him last year, didn't we?
Yeah. And so here, what makes this also interesting is that Carter and Heath had not recorded together for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And before that, they hadn't recorded since 1960. So apparently, Skaff was able to get Carter to agree to the record on this session, and then Heath agreed to record on it because Carter had agreed, because he wanted to play with Carter again. But this is sort of also a product of the Corona situation. So they had arranged to record this, but it was getting difficult to get recording time, and because of virus restrictions and whatnot, so they had no rehearsal sessions for this album. They had just 2 3-hour recording sessions booked. So they had basically 6 hours to make this album. So because of that, reading a few articles with interviews with Skaff on how this was done, what he decided, we have a limited amount of time, so he made the recording mainly based on jazz standards with just 2 of his original compositions, and he kept the arrangements to a bare minimum, and he just wanted to have Ron Carter and Albert Heath do their thing, So like here's here's a sketch, do your thing, and the rest we'll just figure it out.
And Ron Carter absolutely does his thing on this album. The imagination of this 80-year-old man, obviously one of the giants of jazz bass, but the imagination he puts into his bass lines on this album is just really astounding.
It's really he does riveting. This thing. He's given just a sort of sparse sketch of things to do, and then based on that, I thought Skaff does a really nice job here. If he's not normally doing this format where he's responsible for filling out the chords, he
took a back seat pretty often on his own album. I thought
he balances the accompanying and soloing really well. If he's usually used to playing with an organ trio, I thought here. There's one track here called Little Waltz, which is no drums, just a duet with Carter. And then the other track that's sort of shows the interplay in these guys hadn't played before together, and so they're just in this limited time. Yesterday's sort of a jazz standard. He comes into a great intro on the guitar, and then this comes into a really fine melodic Ron Carter solo, and Skaff shifts to the rhythmic backing mode sort of seamlessly, and I thought that was really nice. And then it's not, I guess it's a jazz standard, but it's a Ellington composition, the Lady of the Lavender Mist. Is one of Ellington's beautiful compositions, and that's done really well here. So, when you know the background of it also, that, these are musicians just getting together with a limited schedule, and Skaff organizing this and hoping just to play off the strengths of these 2, jazz legends, and himself, just sort of slotting in. And even though he's the leader here, he as you say, he pays deference to Ron Carter's expertise and sort of interweaves his concept with that. I thought it's a sublime and mature, recording. And he has that he doesn't have a huge guitar sound. It's sort of a focused sound in the school of, Wes Montgomery and that sort of older style of jazz. But, and he plays with a lot of restraint, but he seems to be equally adept at melodic lines and harmonic sort of backing playing. And it's a nice album, and I think having him on Smoke Sessions is, it's a nice addition to their other guitarists. Like they've got Peter Bernstein, has a sort of bigger sound and a little different concept than Skaff. But I think Skaff is an excellent guitarist, and this album was really enjoyable for me.
Yeah, for me too. I really enjoyed Ron Carter's playing throughout, though. He was really just grabbing my ear all the way through, just magnetic, and showing he's a fairly athletic bass player even into his 80s. It was pretty amazing to hear. I was pretty floored by that. I liked this album all the way through. I like jazz guitar a lot. I like that he plays a lot of chords, but again, he did a lot of accompanying on this album, and I felt like to me it felt like more like a Ron Carter album, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's really nice.
Yeah, it's amazing that, they could just, say, look, we're going to do these tunes and, with just 6 hours and never having, played together before, come in and have performances like this that, the communication is at such a high level. It shows the experience and professionalism of them as a group, and not just to play proficiently enough, but to, you can sense that they're really communicating well, and their sort of intuition is already matched. There's no sort of uncomfortableness or sort of misdirections here. They're in tune with each other. On all this material, and the sort of sketchiness of the arrangements is filled up with the musicianship and character of especially as you say Ron Carter. He can just fill in that role quite easily.
Yeah.
But yet Skaff he has enough character to set the mood in all of these pieces. So yeah, it's a very nice recording, and I'm glad that musicians like this have been able to overcome the restrictions and difficulties in this Corona time and still put out adventurous recordings like this. So.
And I'm glad that we were able to overcome the restrictions and bring this podcast to everybody.
What else is better to do?
Yeah, well, there's nothing. I guess there's nothing else to do.
It's a great time. I have to say, in whatever your opinions of the craziness of this. More than a year of recent history. If you are a music lover, there's been no better time to.
I know I have these amazing albums from the last 2 years. It's been a really good 2 years musically. Yeah, lock yourself in a room and just listen to music. It's going to be great.
All the new music and listen to the old music. And stay away from other people because they're just going to annoy you anyway.
Not to mention get you sick.
Get you sick, exactly.
Yeah.
So stay home and listen to.
You have an excuse now.
Music old to stay and new. Away. Music is always your best friend, and it stays with you for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
That's what the good thing about it is. So.
Yeah. What was I thinking today? I was thinking I should, if I were to start my own separate podcast and go through one album per podcast of every CD I have, I would have something to do until the day I die. How
it's
about
an interesting idea. Yeah. Unless somebody, it still would be the day you die, but someone might come and kill you first if you did that.
Well, there would still be till the day I die.
Still be to the day you die, yeah. Just make sure you leave all those CDs to me when you do die, so I can carry on for you.
I got to tell you, you're about the only one who would want them, so they're yours, actually. So you heard it here. That's my my verbal will.
Yes, this is Mike's final will and testament. The CDs go to me.
If Russ murders me though, then the deal's off.
Okay, that's an exception clause in there.
There's an exception clause. Your wife can't murder me either.
No, she won't do that. Who knows what she's doing now? Where we're spending time together. It's a sole release from me, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. If my murder is traced to you in any way, the deal's
Whenever
off.
we're doing this, she doesn't have to listen to my music either, so she probably sees it as a.
She likes that.
Yeah, I think she needs a break. Yeah, so between my listening and playing music, everyone needs a break. So,
all right. Yeah. So anyway, looks like this has been a very long podcast.
It's been a lot to say. There's a lot of good music to talk about here. That's right.
Yeah,
so
there was a lot to say about it, basically, is what it came down to.
Yeah. So if you made it to the end here, we thank you for listening. And as I said at the beginning, if you enjoyed this podcast, please take a few moments to either follow or subscribe, whatever your service says, to our podcast, so you get the new episodes, and it'll also help us out in the listings so that other people can discover us. If you have a few more seconds, please give us a rating with stars or leave a review of our podcast on your particular platform. That will also help us out. If you have any comments, requests, or communications, or just want to let us know who you are, please get in touch with us at our email. That's adultmusicpodcast, all one word, gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you and know about you, or if you have any requests or comments, we're interested to hear your ideas and comments or opinions, and be happy to reply to you. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back again next week with episode 10. I think we've got a backlog of things. Yes, we've got a lot of things in the hopper to bust out. So
yeah, we got some good stuff coming.
Lots of good things coming up. So thanks for listening to this 9th episode of Adult Music for the mature mind. And
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we'll be back again next week with episode 10, so stay tuned.